What if the most German meal you have ever eaten was never German at all? What if the burger sizzling on your grill this weekend, the sausage tucked into a soft bun at the ballpark, and the chocolate cake your grandmother swore came straight from the old country were, every single one of them, born right here on American soil, wearing a German name like a borrowed coat? What if Germany has spent the last century quietly getting credit for an entire shelf of foods it never actually invented, simply because somebody, somewhere, worked out that a German-sounding name would sell? Hi, my name is David, and this is Food Origins, the show where we pull back the curtain on the foods you grew up eating and discover they came from somewhere you never expected. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, because today we are taking on one of the biggest cases of mistaken culinary identity in history. By the end of this video, you are going to look at your kitchen, your favorite diner, and your holiday table completely differently. I promise you, at least 3 of these are going to stop you in your tracks. Let's get into it. Food number 1, the hamburger. Let's start with the heavyweight, the one food on this list that practically wears its German passport on the label. Hamburger. Hamburg. It is right there in the name. The second largest city in Germany, a great northern port on the River Elbe, and surely the birthplace of the single most famous sandwich on planet Earth. Case closed, right? Not even close. Here is what is actually true. There was something called a Hamburg steak, and it was genuinely connected to Germany. In the 1800s, a patty of minced, seasoned beef, sometimes served raw, sometimes cooked, was a common dish among the working people of Hamburg. When waves of German immigrants poured through that port and across the Atlantic to New York, they carried the dish with them. American restaurants near the docks started advertising Hamburg-style steak to lure in hungry German sailors who wanted a taste of home. So far, so German. But a patty of beef on a plate is not a hamburger. A hamburger is that patty, inside a bun, in your hand, eaten on the move. And that idea, the sandwich itself, was born in America. The trouble is, so many Americans invented it at almost the same moment that they are still arguing about it today. Louis Lasson of Louis's Lunch in New Haven, Connecticut, claims he served the first one around 1900 when a customer in a hurry asked for something he could eat on the run. Charlie Negreen was flattening meatballs into patties at a Wisconsin county fair back in 1885, so fairgoers could stroll and eat at the same time. The Menches brothers say they ran out of pork sausage at a fair in Hamburg, New York of all places, swapped in beef, and named it after the town. And Fletcher Davis of Athens, Texas, may have taken his version all the way to the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. Here's the detail that reframes the whole thing. Germany gave America a lump of minced beef. America gave the world the bun, the assembly line, the drive-through window, and a sandwich now eaten billions of times a year on every continent. The name says Hamburg. The invention says USA. Food number 2, the hot dog. If the hamburger is the heavyweight champion of this list, the hot dog is right there in its corner, and it has an almost identical story. The names alone sound like a tour of Central Europe. Frankfurter after Frankfurt, Wiener after Wien, which is the German name for Vienna. Every instinct you have tells you this thing came off a boat from the old country. And once again, the sausage itself has real European roots. Long, thin, smoked sausages were being made in Frankfurt and Vienna for centuries. German butchers were masters of the craft, and when they emigrated to America, they brought their recipes and their skill with them. Nobody is taking the sausage away from Germany, but the hot dog is not just a sausage. The hot dog is a whole American invention wrapped around that sausage. It is the soft split bun that cradles it so you do not burn your fingers. It is the mustard, the relish, the onions, the sauerkraut piled on top. It is the ballpark, the street cart, the 4th of July. It is a culture, and that culture is 100% American. The story runs straight through Coney Island in New York. A German immigrant named Charles Feltman is widely credited with selling sausages in rolls from a pushcart on the beach in the 1860s and 70s, because his customers wanted something hot they could eat with their hands while they strolled the boardwalk. Decades later, one of his employees, a young man named Nathan Handwerker, went out on his own, undercut his old boss, and turned Nathan's Famous into an institution that still runs a hot dog eating contest, watched by millions every summer. And then there is the name, Nobody is entirely sure who first called it a hot dog, but the joke about the sausage resembling a long, low dachshund was already floating around American ballparks by the early 1900s. Here is the detail that stops people cold. In Frankfurt, they call it a Frankfurter. In Vienna, they call it a Wiener. Only in America did we look at a smoked sausage in a bun and decide, with total confidence, to name it after a dog. That is not German. That is gloriously, unmistakably American. Food number 3, German chocolate cake. Now, this is the one I have been waiting to tell you about, because it is the single greatest case of mistaken identity on this entire list. If you take away nothing else from this video, take this. German chocolate cake has nothing to do with Germany. Nothing. Not the country, not the people, not the language, not a single thing. I can already see the comments forming. David, it is literally called German chocolate cake. And you are right. But that name is one of the most successful accidental lies in the history of American food. And here is how it happened. Back in 1852, a man named Samuel German was working for the Baker's Chocolate Company in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Samuel German was not German. He was an English-American chocolate maker. And in that year, he developed a new kind of dark baking chocolate, a little sweeter than the usual, designed to make baking easier. The company honored him by naming it after him. They called it Baker's German's Sweet Chocolate. Germans, with an apostrophe and an S, as in belonging to Mr. German. For over 100 years, that bar sat quietly on grocery shelves, doing nothing remarkable. Then, in 1957, a homemaker in Dallas, Texas, named Mrs. George Clay, sent a recipe in to the Dallas Morning News. It was a rich, layered chocolate cake, made with that specific chocolate bar, topped with a gooey coconut and pecan frosting. The paper printed it as German's chocolate cake, and America completely lost its mind. The recipe was so popular, it got syndicated to newspapers across the country. Sales of that chocolate bar reportedly jumped enormously almost overnight. And then, somewhere along the way, the apostrophe and the S quietly disappeared. German's chocolate cake became German chocolate cake. One tiny piece of punctuation vanished, and in doing so, it transformed a Texas housewife's recipe, named after a Massachusetts chocolate maker, into something the whole world now believes came from Bavaria. It is a cake invented in Texas, named after an Englishman, and credited to Germany. If that is not the most American story on this list, I do not know what is. Food number 4, Salisbury steak. Walk into almost any American diner, cafeteria, or frozen dinner aisle, and you will find it. A seasoned beef patty smothered in brown gravy and onions, sitting next to a scoop of mashed potatoes. It sounds a little fancy. It sounds old. And with a name like Salisbury, and a strong resemblance to that hamburger steak we already talked about, it feels like it must have crossed the Atlantic from somewhere in Europe. It did not. Salisbury steak is named after an American, and it was invented as health food, which might be the funniest sentence I say in this entire video. The man behind it was Dr. James Henry Salisbury, an American physician who lived through the 1800s and served as a doctor during the American Civil War. Dr. Salisbury had some very strong and, let us be honest, very strange ideas about nutrition. He was convinced that vegetables and starchy foods were the root of nearly every illness, and that the human body was really designed to run on meat. He recommended that his patients eat minced beef patties 3 times a day, washed down with hot water. He genuinely believed this was the path to a long and healthy life. That minced beef patty became known as the Salisbury steak, and the name stuck in American cookbooks by the late 1880s. So it is essentially a hamburger steak, but rebranded with the name of a meat-obsessed Civil War doctor. Here is the twist that makes this one perfect for our list. When the First World War broke out and anti-German feeling swept across America, all those German-sounding food names suddenly became a liability. Sauerkraut was rebranded as Liberty cabbage, and the hamburger, with its unmistakably German name, was quietly relabeled on many menus as Salisbury steak, precisely because it sounded safely, patriotically American. So the dish that sounds European to your ear was actually the name Americans reached for when they wanted to sound less German. You cannot make this stuff up. Food number 5, the Reuben. Picture it. corned beef piled high, tangy sauerkraut, melted Swiss cheese, a swipe of Russian dressing, all grilled between two slices of rye bread until the whole thing is crisp and golden and dripping. Every single ingredient in that sandwich screams Central European delicatessen. Sauerkraut, Swiss cheese, rye bread. Surely this is a German, or at least a German-Jewish, classic carried over from the Old World. Not quite. The ingredients have roots all over Europe, but the sandwich, the specific combination, the thing you order by name, is an American original. And, like the hamburger, it comes with a good old-fashioned origin argument between two cities. In one corner, New York City. Arnold Reuben ran a famous delicatessen in Manhattan in the early 1900s, and his family long claimed that the Reuben Special was born behind his counter, thrown together for a hungry actress late one night. In the other corner, and this is the story most food historians lean towards, Omaha, Nebraska. The tale goes that a Lithuanian-born grocer named Reuben Kulikovsky created it during a weekly poker game at the Blackstone Hotel sometime in the 1920s. His poker buddies loved it so much that the hotel owner, Charles Schimmel, put it on the menu. And here is the fact that seems to settle it. In 1956, a waitress at that very same Blackstone Hotel named Fern Snyder entered the Reuben into a national sandwich contest, and it won. A sandwich from Omaha, Nebraska beat the entire country. Think about that for a moment. A sandwich stacked with the flavors of Germany and Eastern Europe, one that tastes like it should have been invented in a Berlin beer hall 200 years ago, was actually dreamed up over a card table in Nebraska during the Roaring '20s. The ingredients came from the Old World. The sandwich is pure American Midwest. Food number 6, the hard pretzel. Now, before the comments erupt, let me be very clear. The soft pretzel, that warm, chewy, twisted knot of dough, is genuinely European. Its origins trace back centuries to the monasteries of Europe, where monks supposedly twisted strips of dough to look like arms folded in prayer and handed them to children as a reward. That story belongs to the Old World, and I am not touching it. But the hard pretzel, the crunchy, snappy, shelf-stable pretzel that comes in a bag and lives in your pantry, that one is American, and more specifically, it is Pennsylvanian. The story takes us to the small town of Lidditz, Pennsylvania, in 1861, where a man named Julius Sturgis opened what is widely recognized as the first commercial pretzel bakery in the United States. The most charming version of the tale says that a baker accidentally left a batch of soft pretzels in the oven far too long. Instead of the usual soft, chewy result, they came out hard, crisp, and completely dried through. A disaster, or so it seemed. Except those overbaked pretzels had two remarkable qualities. They were addictive to eat, and because all the moisture was gone, they lasted for weeks without going stale. That accident, if that is what it was, launched an entire industry. This region of Pennsylvania was settled by German immigrants, the very same people who would come to be known, through a beautiful mispronunciation we will get to shortly, as the Pennsylvania Dutch. They brought the pretzel-making tradition with them, and on American soil, they turned it into something new, shelf-stable and endlessly snackable. Here is the number that seals it. To this day, the average person in Pennsylvania eats several times more pretzels than the average American elsewhere, and the state produces the overwhelming majority of the hard pretzels made in the entire country. The soft pretzel is Europe's, the hard pretzel is America's, and it was born from a baker who probably just fell asleep on the job. Food number 7, the Bundt cake. You have seen it 1,000 times, that tall ring-shaped cake with the elegant fluted sides and the hole in the middle. The one that shows up at every church bake sale and holiday gathering in America. The name sounds unmistakably German. Bundt. It practically has a little mustache. And the shape does descend from an old European cake called the Gugelhupf, a ring-shaped cake baked in Central Europe for generations. But here is the thing. The Bundt cake, the specific pan, the specific name, is not German at all. It was invented in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1950. And the word Bundt is a trademarked American invention. Here is how it happened. A man named H. David Dahlquist ran a small kitchenware company called Nordic Ware. A group of women from a local Jewish organization, the Hadassah Society, came to him with a request. They wanted a modern, lightweight version of the heavy cast iron pans their grandmothers had used back in Europe to bake those traditional ring cakes. Dahlquist made them a beautiful fluted pan out of cast aluminium. He needed a name for it, so he took the German word Bundt, which loosely refers to a gathering or an association, added a T on the end to make it his own, and trademarked it as the Bundt pan. And then, almost nothing happened. For years, the pan barely sold. Dahlquist reportedly considered discontinuing it entirely. Then, in 1966, a woman named Ella Helfrich entered a chocolate cake she called the Tunnel of Fudge in the Pillsbury Bake-Off, baked in a Bundt pan, and won second place. Suddenly, every home baker in America wanted that exact pan. Nordic ware was flooded with orders it could not fill fast enough. The Bundt pan went on to become one of the best-selling cake pans in American history. So the next time somebody tells you the Bundt cake is a German tradition, you can gently let them know it was born in Minnesota, named with a word that does not actually exist in German, and made famous by a fudge cake from a baking contest. Food number 8, the Dutch baby. If you have ever had brunch at a trendy cafe, you may have met this one. A giant, dramatic, oven-baked pancake that puffs up around the edges like a golden crater, then collapses the moment it leaves the oven, usually dusted with powdered sugar and a squeeze of lemon. It is often listed on menus as a German pancake, and the name Dutch baby only deepens the confusion. So which is it, German or Dutch? The answer is neither. It is American, from Seattle. Let me untangle the name first, because it is the best part. The word Dutch here has nothing to do with the Netherlands. It is a corruption, a slightly garbled mispronunciation of the German word Deutsch, which simply means German. Americans heard German immigrants describe their food as Deutsch, and English-speaking ears turned Deutsch into Dutch. This exact same mix-up is why we call the German settlers of Pennsylvania the Pennsylvania Dutch, when they were never Dutch at all. They were Deutsch, German. The dish itself is loosely descended from a German pancake called the Pfannkuchen, but the specific version we call the Dutch baby, that puffy, oven-baked showstopper, was created and named at a family-run restaurant called Monka's Cafe in Seattle, Washington, in the early 1900s. According to the family's own account, the name Dutch baby was coined by one of the owner's young daughters. They even trademarked it. So here is the situation. A dish inspired by a German pancake, given a name that is a mangled version of the German word for German, was actually invented in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. The Dutch baby is not Dutch, it is not really German, and it is not a baby. It is a Seattle original with the most misleading name on this entire list. Food number 9, shoofly pie. This one takes us deep into the heart of what is called Pennsylvania Dutch country. And if you have been paying attention, you already know the twist hiding inside that name. Shoofly pie is a dense, sweet, sticky pie built around molasses and brown sugar with a crumbly topping, and it looks and tastes like something pulled from a centuries-old German farmhouse kitchen. And in a sense, it was, except that farmhouse kitchen was in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Dutch, as we just covered, were not Dutch. They were German-speaking immigrants, Deutsch, who settled in Pennsylvania beginning in the 1600s and 1700s. They brought their frugal, resourceful, waste-nothing approach to cooking with them. But shoofly pie itself, the specific pie, is an American invention, developed on American farms, most likely in the 1800s, and it is a masterclass in making something out of almost nothing. Think about what goes into it. Molasses, flour, brown sugar, a little shortening, some water. That is a pantry pie, a pie you could make in the depths of winter when there was no fresh fruit for hundreds of miles and money was tight. It required no eggs and no fresh ingredients to speak of, which made it perfect for the long, hard months on a Pennsylvania farm. Even the name is pure American folklore. The most popular explanation is that the sweet, sticky molasses would attract flies as the pies cooled on the windowsill, so the baker was forever waving them away. Shoofly. Others think it came from the name of a molasses brand. Nobody knows for certain, and honestly, that uncertainty is very on brand for a food this humble. So while shoofly pie carries all the weight of old-world German tradition, And while the people who made it absolutely came from Germany, the pie itself is a genuinely American creation, born from Pennsylvania farm kitchens and a whole lot of molasses. Food number 10, German potato salad. We are ending with the boldest example of all, because this one does not just sound German. It has the word German right there in its name, printed on cans and deli tubs and menus all across America. Warm potatoes, crispy bacon, a tangy sweet and sour vinegar dressing, and crucially, no mayonnaise. Ask most Americans and they will tell you this is the authentic German way to eat potato salad, straight from the old country. Here is the complicated truth. Germany does not have one potato salad. It has dozens. In the north of Germany, potato salad is often made with mayonnaise, creamy and cold, exactly the style Americans think of as the plain American version. It is really in the south of Germany, in regions like Bavaria and Swabia, where you find the warm, vinegar and broth-based salad without mayonnaise. So there is a real German ancestor here, but the specific thing sold and served in America under the label German potato salad, that particular sweet, bacon-heavy, tangy warm salad that shows up at barbecues and gets scooped out of cans, was standardized and popularized in the United States. It was shaped by German-American communities, especially in the Midwest, and then packaged, branded, and sold back to Americans as the German version. It is a lot like calling a dressing Italian dressing. The name points across the ocean, but the exact recipe in the jar was perfected right here. Here is the detail that ties this whole video together. The word German does not always mean from Germany. Sometimes it means made by German immigrants in America. Sometimes it means named after a man called German. And sometimes it just means somebody thought German sounded trustworthy and delicious on a label. In the case of this potato salad, it is a genuine German idea, reshaped by German-American hands, and sold to the world with a name that is only half the story. 10 foods, 10 names that fooled the world, in one country that has been getting credit for a whole shelf of dishes it never actually invented. The hamburger and the hot dog, wearing the names of German cities, but built into the foods we know in American kitchens and on American streets. German chocolate cake, named after an Englishman in Massachusetts and perfected by a housewife in Texas. Salisbury steak, named after a meat-obsessed American doctor. The Reuben, dreamed up over a poker game in Omaha. The hard pretzel from Pennsylvania, the Bundt cake from Minnesota, the Dutch baby from Seattle, shoe-fly pie from a Pennsylvania farmhouse, and a potato salad that is only half as German as its label suggests. Here is what I love about all of this. None of these foods are fakes. None of them are lesser for being American. They are exactly what America has always done best. Take an idea carried over on a boat, tangled up with a memory of home, and build something brand new on top of it, then hand it to the rest of the world. Germany gave America its immigrants, its butchers, its bakers, and its traditions. America took all of that and turned it into a menu the whole planet now eats. So the next time you fire up the grill, or slice into a chocolate cake, or grab a bag of pretzels, take just a second to think about where it really came from. The answer is almost never where the name would have you believe. I'm David, and this is Food Origins. If this changed the way you see your dinner plate, hit that like button and subscribe, because we have stories exactly like this one lined up for cuisines and countries all over the map. And tell me in the comments, which one of these 10 surprised you the most? I have a feeling the German chocolate cake is going to start some arguments, and honestly, good. Some arguments are worth having.